Hey everybody, welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today I want to do a video on how we are swapping over an M54/S54 tank over to the M56 chassis. Now the M56 motor out of this car has been removed because we're doing the M3 swap into it, and so all the systems need to be changed out, and that includes the fuel tank itself. The M3 runs a different pump and it runs a different filter and a whole bunch of other stuff, and we don't want to put any more stress on this really old pump that's in the sealed fuel tank. If you don't know much about the M56 engine, basically it's the low emissions version of the M54 engine, and basically what it does is it returns fuel back to the fuel system a little bit different than the other design. I'm not sure what else there really is in terms of how it actually changes the gas mileage, but for what I can tell, you've got a couple different lines. The charcoal canister is a little bit different. There's just some things that are a little bit different. So we're gonna go over the actual fuel system differences and how I was able to get the M3 parts to fit in the wagon. Now, if you're going from sedan to sedan, M54 to M56 parts, this should be almost a direct swap over. In fact, even from the coupe to the sedan. Now, because the M3 doesn't have a spare tire or a spare tire well, the charcoal canister actually sits in there side to side, and in the non-M cars, they sit front to back. In between the battery tray and the spare tire well, there's a space. Luckily enough, on this car, there's actually all the points to mount all this stuff. I've been very surprised about how similar they are underneath. They're literally like Legos. So I went through all of the mounting points on the bottom of the M3 and they match exactly to the wagon. Now I'm sure there are some differences here and there, and you would expect to have the coupe to convertible be the same and the sedan to the wagon the same, but I'm finding out how impressively similar they are when it comes to how easy they are to work on between the coupe and this wagon. So what we did was we pulled both fuel systems out of the cars and laid them side by side to make sure that everything was gonna match up correctly. Now, there are a few things we need to do, and as long as the computer systems don't freak out on us, which I will report back later if they do, because obviously we are not ready in any way to get this car started, there are a couple things that we had to do, and we will walk through that right now, starting with the charcoal canister. Now here's the charcoal canister off of the M56, and this system up here actually sits right next to your fill nozzle, and this comes down, and then this sits in between your battery and your spare tire well. These mounting points are the exact same on the M3 charcoal canister as well, including these holes here. So I was able to mount them in the same spot. The biggest difference is that this is actually different measurements from this point to here, which was a big issue. I think that the M3 one is probably about 5 inches longer, and so we had to fight that a little bit. We'll go over there and take a look at that. This piece right here sits up by the fuel filler, but on the M3 charcoal canister, and I think on the other non-SULEV models, that sits right here. And so this plug moved from here and we pulled it down over into here. So now that we know what this looks like, let's go see exactly what we had to do to get the M3 one to fit. Now this looks like a bit of a mess, and it kind of was, but it actually isn't as difficult as we thought. So we're gonna pull off this liner here. So right up in there is where that old system used to sit, and this black piece and that filler hose, all this is actually a different design, but it fits in the same location, same studs and everything to make that system fit. Now because the hoses on the M3 were able to come down, and this actually sat right here, the hoses would come down and lock right into it. So this blue one here that I had to redo, this goes all the way out to the engine, comes back here and locks into there. That used to come down and swoop out. I was able to cut it and put in a rubber hose so that I gave it a little bit more flexibility. This one right here, if you can see, has just been modified just a little bit. I added some heat to it. It looks a little rough, but it is completely sealed. I didn't make any holes in it, so I just added a little bit of heat so it would come over. And that is a vent, and that hides behind all of this. The biggest pain was this one right here. Now, I've got to be really careful because the subframe sits right here, so I don't have a lot of room back behind here. So I was able to take an old radiator hose that I had sitting around and cut it up and make it how I want. Now, when it makes this corner right here, it used to kink. And so what I did was I took this piece right here. This came off of the original. So that's the original right there. It's been cut. And this was gonna get thrown away. And I took a piece about this big and I slid it into this hose right here so it would keep it round instead of starting to kink on it. So now all this fits. There's actually an indent right here to allow this stuff to slide past it. I already have these vent hoses run through. I did have to run a string to this one and pull it through because it doesn't flex for probably good 8 inches or so through here, and it was difficult to make through those corners. But I got all 3 of them through, and we will go over where those fit into the fuel tank. And then the other thing I want to talk about is wiring. We'll get to that in a second. This blue hose sits in the exact same location as the metal one that came out of the M56 tank, and that runs all the way up to the front. It turns black, so it's actually this hose closest to us. Comes all the way up here to the front, and then is that piece right there. So here's the 3 hoses. You got 1, 2, and 3. We had to repair the fuel tank in a previous video. I'll have the link to that up in a card, and we are ready to get this put in as soon as we go over the wiring. And I didn't want to put this in the rest of the way until I was done with the video because I kind of wanted to show it during the process. So if you're going from M3 to any non-M car, you just make sure that you turn the charcoal canister from side to side to front to back, and then you're good to go on all of that. Everything else matches up. When it comes to the fuel system itself, you've got 2 lines here. One of them was the blue and black line that we just followed, and the other one is replaced by this. And funny enough, on the wagon, even though there's no fuel filter, there's even a spot for this to lock in. So I found that really cool that so far these cars are literally the exact same underneath, and I've been very happy about that. It was one of the things I was worried about. So hopefully all that makes sense. I know that there was a lot to cover. This video is probably gonna be a little bit out of order because I don't really want to put this video out until we've got the car running. I don't want to show this video and be like, oh, this is how you go from a M56 fuel tank to an M54 fuel tank, and then find out later that, oh, when I went to go turn on the car, it didn't work right, and this video has been out for 3 or 4 months. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how far out we are at this point to getting the car started, but this video might be a little bit out of order. So we will see everybody in just a second when I've got the fuel system put back together, and then we'll see everybody a lot later once the car is actually running, and then we'll go over the system one more time for everybody. So here's a plug out of the M56, and here are 2 plugs out of an M54 or S54, just a normal fuel tank. And you'll see here that there are 6 wires. There is a large power and ground, and then there are 2 small powers and 2 small grounds. Now in this system, 4 of these wires will go to the fuel pump side. You'll have the 2 large ones, and then you'll have a pair of the small ones, power and negative. And then on the driver's side of the car, you'll have the other small ones, and that's where all 6 come from. 4 to one side, 2 to the other, 6, and the M56 has all of them all in one plug. I was getting a little bit confused about what I was gonna do with this, because I know that these are for the fuel pump, this is for a level sensor, and that's for another level sensor. There's level sensors on both sides of the fuel tank, but I couldn't figure out how to hook up this side. And then I realized, if you look really closely, there's little yellow dots on these wires and little white dots on these other wires. And if you go to the normal fuel tank system, same thing. There's your 2 large ones, and then these 2 have yellow dots on them, and then this pair has white dots on them. So that's how we're gonna hook it up. And luckily enough for me, I actually have a wire laying around from the E46 death cart that we did, where it's a red power cable, but it's got white dots on it. So that's what I'm gonna use to run over to the driver's side. So the white is actually on the driver's side and the yellow dots are on the passenger side. This seems a little bit confusing, but it's really straightforward. Basically all we did was cut this side out, and then we're gonna be putting the wires together directly. Now, even though I cut quite a bit of a length on these, because the M3 that we're stealing the system from is gonna be getting a fuel cell, so these wires won't really matter too much, they're still not long enough to reach all the way to the other side of the car. So we are gonna have to extend them, and that's why I brought in the fact that I've got another set of wires. So I'm gonna put this whole system together, and then we are going to go over everything so that I can show you exactly what I did so that you can do the same. And then again, this video will probably be a little bit out of order because I wanna make sure that everything works properly before I release this video. Showing you how to do something ended up showing you how to do it wrong. All right, so here is the final setup. We have our 2 bigger wires coming from the car into the new system. And then over here we have our 4 smaller wires. And like I said, the yellow stays on the passenger side and the white goes over to the driver's side. And then here is that extension that I talked about. You can see I just happen to have a red wire with white dots on it. You don't have to do that, but I would definitely recommend making it red and then your negative either brown or black. That runs over to the other side. So at this rate, the only thing I have to do now, put this back together, and then I will report back if there's any coding or any other issues after starting the car, crossing my fingers that we don't have to do anything else besides just wiring this up and the conversion that we had to do to get this fitted in there. If that's all it is, then this makes it quite an easy swap. Well, I'm gonna close out on this video. Everything I showed you beforehand does in fact work. The car runs, everything is working properly. This whole process of swapping the tank over took me a long time because I had to do a lot of recording. But for you, if you've got 2 cars side by side like I do here, really just pulling the tank from one car, seeing how everything is hooked up, and then just moving it straight over. Like, just make sure everything's hooked up the exact same. Besides moving those wires around and a couple custom hoses, that was really it. I think I spent about 50 bucks moving the parts over. That would be like the brass nipples and some of the hose clamps and some different hoses I had to buy. It was about $50. So this is actually a really cheap modification. I don't know if this will throw your computer off. This has been tuned to run how it is now. So you might have a computer tune. I guess the only other thing that I would be worried about if you were doing this kind of swap is that second fuel line that runs either to or from your engine. I don't necessarily know exactly how the M56 works, but we do have the S54 in here. It is running. So thanks for watching. We'll wrap this up. If you have any comments or questions, I'm sure there will be a lot. If anybody starts to do this process, please leave them in the comment section below. I will do my best to answer and reply to all of your comments and questions. If there is something specific you guys need to see, I could potentially make another video if there was something that I missed or didn't show properly. As long as I'm not having to completely disassemble the fuel tank, I don't see why it would be a problem for me to record another section for this video if I didn't explain or show something properly. We are doing a 10,000 subscriber giveaway. I don't know how many subs I'll have when this video is posted. We record weeks and weeks out. If you want to see our videos closer to when they are recorded, you can subscribe to our Patreon for just $1 a month. You can see early ad-free access of our content. If we're already at 10,000 subscribers, I apologize, but we are going to be doing more giveaways. So all you have to do is follow our Instagram at Tenza_motorsports. We'll be pulling names from our Tenza Motorsport followers from Instagram for our giveaways in the future. That's the best way to do it. YouTube makes it a little bit difficult to see who subs, and there's different ways to do it on YouTube, but I would really rather just do it on Instagram. So if you want to be part of the 10,000 subscriber giveaway or any further giveaways, all you have to do is follow us on Tenza_motorsports on Instagram. That's all you got to do. Thanks everybody so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and we will see everybody in the next video.